What is up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel. Now, I left you guys on a cliffhanger the other day because I did the worst palettes of 2022, and today I want to do the video of the best palettes that I tried in 2022. So let's get started. So I actually filmed that video sort of back to back, but I wasn't happy with the ranking when I started editing it. This is actually the ranking I feel much more comfortable with, so therefore I decided to just redo this video, I guess. Anyway, if this is your first time here and this is the first time you see me here, my name is Sonia. I love everything high-end and luxury beauty. I actually prefer very neutral, basic Quartz and quints. So you're not going to see a lot of bigger palettes on my channel. I do have some colorful palettes here in my best, and I have some bigger palettes, but it's important for me to tell you, if this is your first time here, I'm quite basic, so the palette ranking is also reflecting that. So on number 10, I have a bigger palette for you guys. This is the biggest palette in my collection, and it's this one by Patrick Ta. This is the Major Dimensions, a one palette by Patrick Ta. I had been pining for this palette for a while, and Patrick Ta came out with a newer one this year. This is the Major Dimensions to the rose tone ones. Honestly, I'm not into rose tones. I'm definitely into basic neutral brown tones, and this palette was screaming to me because of that. This palette, if you've never seen this palette before, has a few different finishes. You got your shimmers, you got two creams in here, you got your mattes, you got your sort of semi-mattes where you see a little bit of glitter reflex in it. For example, this lighter shade over here, it still translates a little bit like a matte, but because there are some shimmery bits in there, it has a little bit more dimension. I like the quality of this palette a lot. The looks that I get from this, I like that you can make a day to night look with this, and there's just a lot to love. And for someone that likes a basic palette, it's just a basic monochromatic dream to me. The reason it's on number 10 is because the shimmer formulation isn't my favorite formulation. I can make it work. I like the looks that I get from it, but it's not my favorite. And second, there are only about, I guess, 5 shades that I pull from here, so it might as well have been a quince. I saw someone from the comment section the first time I demoed this. She said the same thing. She was like, yeah, I bought this and I still only pull for 5 shades. I'm the same. So I usually pull for one of the creams. I pull for at least one of the shimmer shades, and I deepen out the outer corners. I do a crease shade and an inner corner shade, and that's basically it. So I use about 5 shades when I use this palette, and that is the only reason why it's on this list on number 10, but it deserves to be on my best of list because I've been enjoying it so much. And I did want to showcase it in this video because although it didn't launch in 2022, I did try it in 2022, and I've been loving it, guys. I've been loving it. Then another palette that I have that is a little bit of a bigger palette, not one that's often talked about because I think people find it a very boring palette, but I find it such a dependable palette, and I had to put it somewhere in this ranking, and that is this one. This is the Goss Smoky Quartz palette, not to be confused with any of the other Smoky Quartz palette that came out this year, but this is the Goss Smoky Quartz palette. This is a more neutral, cool tone, a little bit more cool tone leaning palette, and this is my first Goss palette that I ever tried from the brand, and this is the first one that actually called my name and was like, okay, you should get this one. Now this palette has a few different finishes. It has the mattes, it has a satin, and it has of course a celestial shade, which is a topper shade. These pans are super big and nice. You can really use bigger brushes with these in case you want to use this for the face. I know that some people don't like the bigger pans, but for Goss, I feel like it really works. I've demoed this palette a few times on my channel. Off camera, I've been enjoying this palette because it's just a very easy, simple formulation. There's no doodads with it. There's no cream to powders. It's going to be a neutral toned with a little bit of pop of shimmer. You don't even have to use the shimmer. You can make it kind of a 90s neutral look, and nothing about it screams special, but at the same time it's very special in that way because I never have to worry about having a good look with this palette. I know it's gonna come out great. They're very blendable shadows. They're opaque enough for me to use. I really like the wetness that this shade gives. It's just very pretty. I like that this shade is in there just to buff out some of the colors or just to mix with a little bit of colors. There's a really nice crease color in here to contour your eyes, and there's just a lot to love for a neutral lover when it comes to this palette. You don't see this palette too often around, but I actually feel like it deserves more love on the internet, and I'm really happy that this is my first Goss palette. So number 8, I have a palette that I really love. and I didn't think that I was gonna love this palette. This is the Lisa Eldridge Vega palette. Now I got all of the Lisa Eldridge palettes. I did a video on them. That video, by the way, is doing pretty well, so check out that video if you want to see just all the palettes demoed on my skin color. And the Vega palette is ranking this high because I never thought I was gonna love such a cool tone palette. Now, there is lots of love here. There's also some like disclaimers that I want to have with this palette, but first off, let's talk about the things that I love in this palette. One, the undertones. Even though it's a cool tone palette, it works on me. I'm quite warm toned in the face, and cool tone palettes usually wash me out, but this one really doesn't. It makes my eyes look so beautiful, and I know it did because most of you guys in the comment section told me that the Vega palette was the most prettiest one out of all of them, and you guys were surprised that this wasn't my favorite in that video. And I get it, because the look that I can get from it, or the looks that I can get from these, is just so stunning. What I also like about this is that the packaging is refillable, so you can buy all of these shadows in singles, and if you want to mix and match, which what I've been doing, I've been really playing with all the palettes, making my own palette out of it. If you want to mix and match, you can, which kind of shoots up the reason why I like these palettes so much. It's such a nice way to customize the palette for yourself. Try out different formulations, because there are 6 different formulations that you can try from. There's not 6 different formulations in the palettes that she curated, but overall there's 6 different formulations. And this is where I'm gonna get to like one negative point of this, is that this is a very matte heavy palette. Lisa Eldridge came out with 2 mattes. The Velvet Matte, which is her cream to powder sort of formulation, and the Seamless Matte. The Seamless Matte is more of a powder matte formulation, and this one does have a little bit of fallout, and the Vega palette has 3 Seamless Mattes in here. If you're not into fallout, don't get this palette. Check out some of her other velvet colors to maybe go with some of the palettes. Also, Lisa Eldridge told me herself that she's gonna come out with empty palettes, so you can really curate your own palette by 2023. All from scratch, so you don't have to buy a curated palette with a few singles, but you can just buy the singles and the palette all at once. The metallics in here, beautiful. I love the metallic formulations. I also like the luminous in here. I hate the luminous in the Muse palette, by the way, just a little side note, but the luminous in this one is pretty great. We have one velvet in here, which I like the velvet formulation. This, by the way, this color is my least favorite color because it translates very blue toned on me, but you guys seem to like it, and honestly, as a palette as a whole, it just performs really well. I like this as a cool toned option for my warmer toned skin, so if you were interested in this palette, I would definitely recommend you to look at it. Then on number 7, I have one that was ranked in the mid-year really high, and now it's kind of ranked on number 7. You know, I tried 40 palettes this year, so the fact that these are my top 10, all of these perform really great. But let's talk about it, and that is this one. This is the Tom Ford Smoky Quartz palette, not to be confused with the Wayne Goss Smoky Quartz palette. Now, I like this palette for a few reasons, and one, it's a very nice neutral basic toned palette. I tried both Smoky Quartz and Tiger Eye. I wasn't really into the metallics of this formulation. This is the Eye Color Quad Cream, so they have the normal formulation, you get the wet dry formulation, and this Eye Color Quad Cream came out this year. It's a newer formulation. It's sort of the cream to powder formulation. For my eyelids, it has about a 4-hour wear time. I have to wear an eye primer with this one, and that's the reason why it sort of like fell into the ranking, because I believe this was ranked on number 2 in my mid-year ranking. I do really like the color stories. You can use some of these shades as one and dones, and it looks super beautiful. As a palette as a whole, I love the look that I get from this. Honestly, I really like the performance of the matte shades in the cream color formulation because of the amount of pigment, because of the blendability, and just it's been a really fun time to use. It's a very expensive palette. This is a bit of a splurge. Get it on a sale maybe, but this one has really been a really nice one for just every day, but also, and this is why it's ranking still so high, in the fall time. These are nice fall colors, and this is just a really nice fall palette to have in your collection, especially if you're not really into shimmers. I feel like my eyelids are not the same as when they were in their 20s, and a full matte look actually looks really great on me, and I'm not intimidated by it anymore. I don't have to like whack on a shimmer every single time, and this one has just been really great as an overall palette. I debated between the Tom Ford and this one, which one should be on number 6, but I've decided to put this one a little bit higher because I pull for it a little bit more, and that is this one by Charlotte Tilbury. Again, not one that came out this year, but this is the Easy Eye Super Nudes palette. It came out as a re-promote last year with the Supermodel collection, and I got this one early this year for my birthday from my parents. Now I didn't know I was gonna love it, but this is a really interesting formulation. Also, all of these are sort of mattes, but they're in between a matte and a satin because they're not completely flat mattes. As you can tell, there is a little bit of a sheen to it. It's not a glitter sheen. They're still performing as a matte, but this is a very interesting formulation from Charlotte Tilbury, not like some of her other palettes. This is a unique palette in that sense. The reason why I like this above the Tom Ford one is because you can do a full look out of it. You can do multiple looks out of it. There's more shades in here. You can go more cool toned. You can go more warm toned. And I love to pull out this palette if I'm missing a shade from a different palette. I pull out this one. So this palette has sort of a multi-use function in my collection, whereas you can pull this as a palette on its own and pull it with other palettes and it still works out. You'll be surprised how often I pull for this palette, and that is the reason why it's ranking so high, because it's just a very versatile palette for how small it is, and I really like the formulation in this. It's a bit softer in pigment when it comes to the Tom Ford one, and therefore I sort of kind of don't know how to rank them. These do perform really well even without an eye primer, and yeah, I feel like it deserves a spot on my number 6. Then when we're still on the Charlotte Tilbury train, this was my mid-year favorite and it's on my number 5 right now, and that is this one by Charlotte Tilbury. This is the Pillow Talk Dreams palette, and it's honestly a dream to work with. I'm not kidding. These mattes are the most buttery mattes ever. It's not like all of our other palettes. I have a lot of Charlotte Tilbury palettes. I love the Charlotte Tilbury formulation, even the older formulation. I like the shimmers in here, and these are just crazy. So this is sort of the topper shade, but look at the base pigment in that. Very refined shimmers. Then one of my favorite colors is this, the Prime shade. This is just such a great palette to have. It's such a well-performing palette. It's also made for, I feel like this is also made for deeper skin tones, because the Pillow Talk Original palette is very fair, and I don't know if deeper skin tones would love that one, but this one just performs really well. For rose toned color palettes, I think this one, it outperforms all of my other rose tone palettes. I like to pull for this one just when I want to do a very simple, easy, rose toned but impressive look, because the look I can get from this is pretty intense, but you don't have to go intense. You can go in with the 2 top shades and go in for a very subdued rose tone look. I like this palette for its versatility, its formulation, and I love this palette for the springtime, for daytime, for just easy time. I think probably one of the best performing Charlotte Tilbury palettes that I have in my collection, if not the best performing one. I don't know if it's my favorite one, but definitely the best performing one. Then on number 4, the palette that I have been using a lot off camera. I haven't demoed this on camera just yet, but I am going to do a tutorial on this palette, I think in 2023. I have already filmed it, I just haven't edited the video just yet, but this is the Surratt Beyond Beige palette. I love this palette. Yes, again, just like the Tom Ford, just like the Wayne Goss, just like the Charlotte Tilbury Easy Nudes palette, we're again looking at a brown toned quad. These are long wearing, they feel like butter. This one, oh, this one down here, such a beautiful shimmer to it. There's sort of kind of very micro V-flecks in there that are kind of gold, which gives a lot of dimension to the eye. And I just been really enjoying to pull for this palette because it's so well performing. They blend out so nicely, and these are refillable, so you can buy these shades individually. This is a curated palette by Surratt, so this is called the Beyond Beige palette. You can get this on Beautylish. It's often sold out, and I totally understand why. I got mine from Space NK, in case any Europeans of you guys are watching. You can get Surratt in a few places, but not the entire line, so not the entire collection has been available on the European websites, unfortunately. But this one I did get on a sale because it is a little pricey, but guys, it's so worth the money. You can make it very soft, so you don't have to go in with a lot of pigment, but you can even build up the pigment on these, and it's just a really nice palette. It's probably the best beige tone palettes that I have in my collection, honest to God. Then on number 3, a palette that I love. It's a limited edition palette, so I don't want to talk about it too much, but that's this one by Chanel. This is the 747 Mediterranean palette, and I love it. This is nice for a bright toned eye. It doesn't look like much in the pan, honestly, it doesn't. And also, I've abused this to the core, don't you think so? Like, it used to have an embossing on there. In my Tweed palette, there's one formulation that's like this. I use that one wet as well, so if you have this one and you have never tried it wet, try this palette wet, and it's just a really different experience. You don't have to try it wet. I just really like the easy look you can get from this. It's a bright eye, and I like a bright eye with a liner, and that's it. It's just a nice everyday palette, and I like to reach for this just if I don't know what to wear or I don't want to wear a lot of eyeshadow. This is kind of what I want to go for. I also like my Charlotte Tilbury Star Aura palette. They give a very similar look. That one pulls a little bit more peach toned. This one was a little bit more khaki toned. I love this palette. It ranked high in my mid-year ranking. It's still ranking high, but my number 2 palette I've been using so much because lately I've not been using a lot of eyeshadows lately. I've been going in with just a liner and a topper shade, and that is the reason why I'm putting this on number 2, because I've been using this a little bit more than my number 3 Chanel palette, so the 747 Chanel palette. But I'm definitely debating on like if this ranking is correct. Like maybe this one should be on number 3 and the Chanel one should be on number 2. Anyway, let's just talk about my number 2 palette, and that's this one. This is an LH Cosmetics palette. Now I like to go for mainstream brands, as you can tell, and I don't really go for like more indie brands, and this is a little bit more indie. So this is a limited edition shimmer palette. It's called the Shimmer Saga palette. I've hyped this up a few times on my channel. I recently did a collab video with Brittany from Born Blushing. Check out our channel, check out our collab, because I use this palette as well. I use the Love shade as a topper shade, and these are 4 beautiful dual-chromed shimmer shades. Now as a palette as a whole, I honestly don't really use it, which is why I put it on my number 3 last time I did this ranking. But as topper shades, just on top of any look, oh, this looks so stunning. So in my video where I ranked the worst palettes, I did use one of the topper shades above the Surratt Beyond Beige palette to amp up that look. And that's what I like about this palette. The shadows are shimmery goodness. Very little fallout for how much shimmer is in here. There is a bit of fallout. It's always the case with shimmer shades, especially when they're this pigmented. I love the subtle duochrome shift that it has. I love the shades in here that she chose for the duochrome shift. It's probably one of the best glitter formulations that I have in my collection. If you press in it too hard, it's almost putty. That's how great, like, wet these shadows are. The shadows are well performing, super stunning on the eyes, and if you can still get this palette anywhere because it is limited edition, I would highly recommend you to get it. It's just a really great palette to have. Then for my number 1, most of you guys probably would know already because I'm wearing it on the eyes today. And my number 1 palette is this one by Eldridge. This is the Sorcery palette. Yes, it's currently out of stock. It's going to be in stock again early 2023, and I love this palette. What's great about this is as a palette as a whole, it works beautifully. This is about the look that you can get from it, and you get this beautiful peacock eye. I feel like very wearable, not too intense. It's just really nicely curated. The colors look great together, and I like every single time I do a look with this palette, I just like how the look comes out. So as a curated palette, stunning. I would definitely recommend it as a curated palette. Then you can also get different shadows, pop out some of the shadows that you don't like, and pop in some of the shadows that you do like. So you can curate your own palette with this, which is another function of these Eldridge palettes that I absolutely love, because I've been loving playing with these shadows. This is a very metallic heavy palette, and I love the Eldridge metallic formulation. Also, there's a luminous in here, and the luminous is a duochrome, and this one is very similar performing as the LH Cosmetics palette that I just talked about. I love this luminous in here. Let's pop in a little bit more in the center so you can tell. Yeah, this luminous in here outperforms all the other luminouses in all of these palettes. So you got 4 metallics in here, a luminous, and you got 1 seamless matte, which is this one, the Troubadour color. And this is a green, beautiful seamless matte. I love putting this all in the outer corner, then going in with just one of the topper shades, and then you already have a look. You don't have to do much more. I find this a very beautiful curated palette. I like the formulations in here, and I like that it's refillable, and it will come back in stock later. I could talk about this palette for days, but all you need to know is it's my number 1 performing palette. I'm gonna make sure to link all of these palettes down below. Let me know what you guys think of this ranking, because now the ranking is all done. I'm not gonna film this video anymore, and I hope you guys liked this video. If you did like this video, if you just want to talk about makeup, comment down below as well. I love talking to you guys about makeup and connecting about the palettes that you guys have in your collection. Also, if you liked any of the brands that you saw here, subscribe to my channel, because these are sort of the brands that I like to follow. I'm gonna try to purchase a little bit less in 2023 3 because 40 palettes for a channel my size is a little crazy. I'm gonna try to declutter a little bit more in 2023, but I'm very happy with all the palettes that I have here. I'm gonna end the video here. Thank you guys all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next year. Bye!